Now let us quickly go over the kinetic theory of gases. First of all, you should note that the properties of gases are entirely different from those of solids and liquids. Okay, in the case of gases, the thermal expansion is very large as compared to solids and liquids. Also, if you take into consideration the intermolecular forces, intermolecular forces, then solid is greater than liquid is greater than your gas. Okay, if you take potential energy into consideration, potential energy, then you see that gas is greater than liquid greater than solid. There are other things as well that can be discussed, but these are essential for the examination. We bring your attention to the ideal gas concept. Okay, in a ideal gas, uh, we have a fluid which follows all the gas laws and the gas equation at every possible temperature and pressure. Okay, here in the ideal gas concept, we assume that the gas molecules has a negligible volume as compared to the volume of the container. So the volume of the gas will be equal to the volume of the container. So the first thing that you should notice, volume of gas equal to volume of container in which your gas is kept. So if the container is open, then you cannot write the volume of the gas present inside it. Okay. No intermolecular forces are acting between the gas molecules. Also note that the specific heat of the ideal gas is constant and it does not change with temperature. So a graph that is essential for you to remember is your specific heat for a ideal gas is constant with temperature. Okay. And you should note that all real gases will behave as ideal gas at higher temperatures and low pressures. But real gases are not worth mentioning in the physics part of the kinetic theory. So we'll just move to the equation of the state. So the equation of the state is given as PV is equal to mu RT, where mu is the number of moles of the gas. You can easily see the different proportionality relations from here. Okay, and we'll look at several examples to see how these things work. There are three gas laws which bring into the picture and the equation of state into its existence. First one is known as the Boyle's law. It says that V is inversely proportional to P. Second is known as this is when T is equal to constant. Okay. Similarly, you have something known as the Charles law, which says that V is proportional to T. This is when P is equal to constant. So P constant. Always uh, think of this equation and find these laws out as well. And there is something known as the Avogadro law, which says that at the same temperature and pressure of equal volumes of all gases contain equal number of molecules. Okay, so I'll just write down Avogadro's law. It says that uh, N1 is equal to N2 if PV, V and T are same. So thus at the same temperature, pressure and volume, all gases contain equal number of molecules. Okay. The next is the Dalton's law of partial pressure. So the pressure exerted by the gaseous mixture of many different gases is equal to the sum of the partial pressures of each component of the gas present in the mixture. Okay. How do you calculate the partial pressure? So, for example, let the number of moles of any gas be N1 in a mixture of many gases. Then the partial pressure is nothing but N1 into RT by V using the same equation of state. Okay, so you can easily find the partial pressures of each, and if you just sum them over, okay, over all the gases, then you'll find that this is nothing but RT by V as a common, N1 plus N2 and whatever value K. This is nothing but the number of moles that was already there in this equation. Okay, now let's summarize some of the essential things from this chapter. First of all, what is the total kinetic energy of a gas? It is equal to half mv square is equal to 3 by 2 pv is equal to 3 by 2 nRT. Okay, you should definitely take a note of this. Your average value of v square is nothing but 3p by rho. Okay, and this quantity is essential, and you should definitely take a note of this and also remember this for the examination. It is v, or velocity, root mean square, which is equal to root 3p by rho is equal to root 3 rt by m, or root 3 kt by small m. This is the molar mass, this is the normal mass of the gas that is given, and both of these are in kg. So when you're trying to find the vrms, everything should be taken in the SI units, so both of these will be taken in kg. And the next quantity is your average velocity. It is equal to root 8 kt by pi m. Okay, and similarly you have your most probable speed or velocity, which is equal to root 2 kt by m. There is this relation that first of all you should take a note of all these, because the examiner expects you to remember these in the paper, and you should know that the vrms is greater than the v average is greater than your v most probable. What are these velocities? I'll just quickly mark them on this small graph. So this is a graph between number of molecules and velocity of molecules. So in this graph you see that the peak, or the most number of molecules, have a velocity which is known as the most probable speed, vmp. Okay, note that your vmax is provided somewhere around here. Okay, so we are not talking about the maximum velocity. From this graph we can easily find the average velocity as well, so you just sum over all the velocities v1 plus v2 of all the molecules and you take the average of it. Okay, and vrms, it's root mean square, so it's the root of your mean square, so xi minus x bar square and a summation over it divided by your n. Okay, so all you need to remember are these three equations that I have shown you here. Next is your velocity of sound. It is given as root over gamma p by rho is equal to gamma into RT by m is equal to gamma into KT by small m. So you should also take a note of this. And what is gamma? We'll see what gamma is soon. So first of all, let us talk about degrees of freedom. So the number of independent ways in which a molecule or an atom can exhibit motion or have energy is known as degrees of freedom. And it's also the number of independent coordinates which is required to specify the dynamical state of the system. For example, if I have a block here, okay, and it is only moving in either this direction or this direction, okay, then it has only 1 degree of freedom, okay, which is in the x direction, that too of translation. Similarly, a projectile has 2 degrees of freedom, okay, y motion and a x motion, both are translation. Okay, if you consider a sphere, that is rolling and moving forward, so how many degrees of freedom are there? There are 3 degrees of freedom. Okay, sorry, there are 2 degrees of freedom. One is rotation and one is translation. With this in mind, you can easily write The degrees of freedom for a monoatomic gas, it is 3 in number. For a diatomic gas, it is 5 in number, and for a polyatomic gas, it's 6 in number. Okay, and how is this so? In the monoatomic gas, there are only 3 directions. So you have your translation in x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis as the 3 degrees of freedom. For the diatomic, you have these 3 axes, plus you can have rotation around 2 axes. Okay, so you can't, if this is your diatomic molecule, this is the line joining them. So you can't have rotation around this axis, but you can have rotation around the 2 perpendicular axes. So you have 2 rotations. Okay. Similarly, for a polyatomic gas, you have 3 translation XYZ and 3 rotations as well. You should note that at high temperatures, a diatomic molecule has 7 degrees of freedom, 3 translation, 3 rotation, and 2 vibrational as well. Uh, Next is the Maxwell's law of equipartition of energy. It says that the total kinetic energy of a gas molecule is equally distributed among all its degrees of freedom, and the energy associated with each degree of freedom at absolute temperature T is half kT. So for each degree of freedom, your energy is equal to half into kT. So the total energy is half kT into the number of degrees of freedom, which is F. So half F kT. Okay. This form, the form of the internal energy is equal to uh, NFRT by 2. NFRT by 2 is crucial when you go for the thermodynamic properties of the gas. So you should definitely remember this, that internal energy is directly proportional to your temperature. So higher the temperature, higher is the internal energy. Let's talk about a mixture of non-reacting gases. So if you have, let's say, a mixture with 2 gases, one has a molecular weight m1 and it has a number of moles as n1 in the system. You have another with m2 and number of moles is equal to n2. So you need to find the total molecular weight that will be used in the equation of ideal gas. That is nothing but n1 m1 plus n2 m2 divided by n1 plus n2. Similarly, you can find the CVs as well, or specific heats. The specific heats, let this one be C1. Let the first gas has a specific heat of C1. This has a specific heat of C2. Then you have N1 C1 plus N2 C2 by N1 plus N2. You can find the gamma of mixture also, which is Cp mixture by Cv mixture. What is Cp and Cv? Cp is the specific heat at constant pressure. Cv is the specific heat at constant volume. Okay. For this also, you can just use these equations to write this form down. And similarly, you can find a equivalent number of degrees of freedom. Okay. So in all the cases, the general form is quite similar, and I'll try to give you some relations here, and we'll go forward and see them again. So gamma is equal to Cp by Cv for any gas. Okay, this is a constant. Note that this will have no dimensions of its own, and gamma is equal to 1 plus 2 by the number of degrees of freedom. So note these two things. As I already said in the case when I was telling you about the velocity of sound. So in the velocity of sound, you had V sound is equal to root of gamma p by rho. So this is where it plays its major role. Okay, and we'll look at this when we talk about adiabatic heat transport in thermodynamics. So a gas mixture consisting of 3 moles of oxygen and 5 moles of argon at temperature T. Considering only translation and rotational modes, the total internal energy of the system is given by what? Now, it's a mixture, so my internal energy, net energy U, will be U1 plus U2. Okay, so if I write U1, it's nothing but N1, number of moles of 1, into number of degrees of freedom of 1, into R into T by 2. Similarly, for the second case, I can write N2 F2 RT by 2. Now if I consider only translation and rotational modes, then I find that F1 is equal to 5 and F2 is equal to 3. Okay, where F1 corresponds to oxygen and F2 corresponds to argon. With this in mind, I can substitute these things back. So I have 5 by 2 into 3RT plus 3 by 2 into 5RT. Okay, let us sum them over, so I get my U to be equal to 15 times RT. Now for a given gas at a 1 atm pressure, RMS speed of the molecules is 200 meter per second. At 2 atm pressure and at 227 degrees Celsius, the RMS speed of the molecules will be given by what? So all these questions are just formula based questions. You just simply write VRMS is equal to root of 3RT by capital M. Okay. Now if I want to compare, I can write V1 by V2 is equal to root T1 by T2 is equal to, I have to write this in Kelvin first of all, 273 plus 127 divided by 273 plus 227. Okay, this turns out to be root over 400 by 500. Okay, is nothing but root over 4 by 5. This turns out to be 2 by root of 5. Okay, therefore we have that V2 is equal to root of 5 by 2 into V1. Okay, and then I just substitute the value of V1 is equal to root 5 by 2 into 200, which gives me the value to be 100 into root 5. Okay, so in this branch of physics, we will deal with the processes including heat, work, and internal energy. Okay, and finally, we will also learn about the conversion of heat into mechanical work and vice versa. So in order to study thermodynamics, first you should take a note of some basic things. First of all is the thermodynamic system. So what is the system? The system, which can be represented in terms of its pressure, volume, and temperature, which are the state variables, is known as the thermodynamic system. Okay. So it is a specified portion of matter consisting of one or more substances on which the effects of variables such as temperature, volume, and pressure are to be studied. Okay. So an example of my system is, let's say a gas enclosed in a cylinder. I have a cylinder, I have some gas inside it, and there is, let's say, a moving piston on top. Okay, so this is this gas inside this cylinder is my system. What is the surrounding? Second part of thermodynamics is knowing what the surroundings are. So anything outside the system which exchanges heat energy with the system and which tends to change the properties of the system is known as the surroundings. The state variables as the state will be defined for the gas by what are the values of P, V, and T of the gas. Now there can be different things outside. For example, there can be a heat reservoir here. Okay, that is providing some heat into the gas. Okay, there can be some piston here which is trying to do some work on the system. So all these things are external quantities, whereas this gas is my system. You have two types of systems. You can have a heterogeneous system and a homogeneous system. So there are two kinds of systems: heterogeneous and homogeneous. So what is heterogeneous? It's a system which is not uniform throughout it. Okay, so this can be a system consisting of two or more immiscible liquids. I can give you an example. More immiscible liquids. So they do not mix. There are two phases in the system. What is a homogeneous system? It's a system in which it is or it's a system which is completely uniform throughout. So it's a pure solid or a pure liquid. Okay. Then we come to an isolated system. Let's talk about what is a isolated system. So an isolated system is a system in which there can be no exchange of matter and energy with the surroundings. So does not allow heat and matter to be exchanged. Matter will be terms in terms of the number of moles of the gas or the system. So the number of moles should not change, or the number of atoms should not change. What is this universe? The system and the surroundings are together known as the universe. So there are several thermodynamic variables of the system. I already mentioned three of them. So they are P, V, T, and there is one more which is known as the composition or mu. Okay. So let's talk a little more about some of these things. The thermodynamic state that I told you about. Uh, so the state of the system can be described completely by the composition mu, pressure, your volume, and temperature. So these will be known as the state variables. Okay. This brings us back to the three laws of thermodynamics that I want to talk to you about. Or let's talk about the relevant ones right now. The first one is the zeroth law. Okay. So it says that if objects uh, A and B are separately in thermal equilibrium with a third object C, say thermometer, then objects A and B are in thermal equilibrium with each other. So if you have an object A, if you have an object B, and they are in thermal equilibrium with each other. Also, object A is in thermal equilibrium with object C. That will imply object B is also in thermal equilibrium with object C. Okay. From here you get the concept of temperature. So if temperature of A is Ta and temperature of B is Tb, and if they are in thermal equilibrium, that implies there is no uh, heat flow between them. Okay. Or basically, sorry, this is not about heat flow. What thermal equilibrium here generally means is that the temperatures of both of them are same. So you have Ta is equal to Tb, and if A and C are in equilibrium as well, you have Ta is equal to Tc. That will imply Tb is equal to Tc. So this is your zeroth law of thermodynamics. There is the first law and the second law as well. So we'll just talk about the essential things. First of all, let me talk about what internal energy is. So the internal energy of a system is the energy possessed by the system due to the molecular motion and molecular configuration. Okay. Uh, so as I already said, U is equal to N or mu F RT by 2. Okay. This is for my U. You can even write this as MC, or sorry, I can given this, I can write another form of U to be my change in U is nothing but mCV dt. So this is another form of U that is essential. This is one form of U. I want you to take a note of both of them. Okay. So internal energy in the absence of intermolecular forces is simply the function of temperature and state only, and it is independent of the path followed. Okay. So du or delta U is nothing but UF minus U initial. delta U or du, nothing but the U final minus the U initial. So it does not depend on the path that you take and by changing your thermodynamic variables. It only depends on the final state and the initial state of the system. Okay. Let's talk about a thermodynamic process. So in a thermodynamic process, the pressure, volume and temperature and entropy of the system change with time. Okay. There are several sign conventions for a thermodynamic process. So the heat gained by a system is positive. Let me tell you about the sign conventions. Uh, you can choose your own sign conventions as well, but you should just remember what is happening in the system. So if I have a system, okay, and if I apply some heat to it, okay, so heat is gained by the system. So I have my first sign convention which says heat gained by the, all these are by the system. Okay, I'll just add the term by the system here. So heat gained by the system is positive. Heat lost by the system is negative. So third, work done by the system is positive. Work done on the system is negative. You have the increase in internal energy of the system, increase in U is positive and decrease in U is equal to negative. Okay, sometimes you might have a trouble because in the chemistry you have different sign conventions, in physics you are trying to use another sign convention. So even if you don't remember these, what you should take a note of is this: if you have a system, let's say S, and I might not conform to whatever conventions I'm telling you here as well, you can make your own conventions. And how do you do that? So you should note that uh, whatever heat the heat that you apply to a system goes in doing some work. Just take a note of this equation. Okay, and what does this equation tell you? It tells you that the heat that I supply to the system will be used by the system to do some work dW and increase its internal energy by a value du. Okay, so what this means is, if I'm applying some amount of heat, if I apply heat, then the internal energy goes up. Okay, uh, and if I if whenever I try to do some work, the work is done by the system, then your internal energy goes down. So I'll just write this in terms of internal energy again to make this more clear. So I have my du is equal to dq minus dw. Okay, now what this means is, the change in my internal energy depends on the heat and the work done. So this is the heat that is provided to the system, and this is work done by the system. Okay, if I just write this in terms of heat provided to the system and work done on the system, so I can easily write this as dq plus dw, but the normal sign convention that you are using is this. With this in mind, we return to our original theme and just try to summarize some of the points. So your du is equal to your dq minus dw, or your heat can be written as the work done plus the change in internal energy. Your gamma is defined as Cp by Cv is equal to 1 plus 2 by F. Okay, and you should note what is a adiabatic process? Okay, an adiabatic process is one in which the thermodynamics variables are changed without exchange of any energy. So no exchange of heat. Okay, that implies dq is 0 in a adiabatic process. So for a adiabatic process, the equation of state is PV to the power gamma is equal to constant. The different kinds of processes. There is the isothermal process in which the temperature remains the same, constant throughout. You have the isochoric process in which the volume remains constant throughout. You have the adiabatic process, as I said, where there is the heat. There is no heat exchange in the system. There is isobaric process where the pressure of the system remains constant, and there is a cyclic process in which you return to your original state. I have summarized what are the work done for each. Note that the work done is nothing but P dV, the integral of P dV. Okay, this should be kept in mind. This formula can be used to find the work done for each. Okay, similarly you can find delta U. As I already said, delta U is equal to mu times n CV into dt. Note that CV is equal to R by gamma minus 1 and Cp is equal to gamma into R by gamma minus 1. You should also take a note of these quantities. I've shown you a graph of P versus V. Okay. First of all, note that in most of the cases you will be given a graph of P versus V because work done is equal to integral P dV. Okay, so the area under the curve will tell you the amount of work done. Okay, so let's look at this graph and see the different things. So you have the adiabatic here, here's a isothermal, isobaric. You can easily even make the isochoric one. So you should take a note of all the slopes that are there right here. So first of all, isobaric has the in these three, isothermal, baric and adiabatic, you should just take a note of all the slopes that are there. Isobaric um, has a negative, has the maximum slope, then you have the isothermal, and then you have the adiabatic. To get a better perspective of what we've been doing so far, I'll tell you about some of the extra things. Let me zoom this out and we'll talk about some extra things that you should know when you're trying to go for the paper. First of all, I already talked to you about what is the cyclic process. So I'll just formally say it again. So we have a cyclic process is a process in which the system returns to its initial state after undergoing a series of changes. Okay. So for example, if you started at a state A, which had some P1, V1 and T1 as the state variables, mu1. Okay, you went around and you came back to the initial state again. Went around means that at every point, let's say this is the point B, at this point it has some P2, V2, T2 and mu2. Okay, so he moved around, he came back to the initial point, so that is known as the cyclic process. So non-cyclic will be what? A non-cyclic process is that process in which the system does not return to the initial state. Then you have something known as the quasi-static or equilibrium process. Okay, quasi-static, okay, or equilibrium process. What this says is it's a thermodynamic process which proceeds extremely slowly, so that at every instant of time the temperature and pressure are the same in all the parts of the system. The third one are the reversible and irreversible processes. So I'll mark them: reversible and irreversible. Okay, so a reversible process is one in which the change in heat or work of direct processes from initial to final state are exactly retracted in opposite sense in the reverse process. Okay, and the system and surroundings are left in their initial states. So if I start from a point A and I apply some heat and work to the system and I bring it to some point B, okay, then if I do the reverse process, for example, if I applied plus W and minus Q, now if I apply minus W and plus Q in the same way, okay, we are able to retrace the entire path back to the same position. Okay, this is the reversible case, and the process which is not reversible is known as the irreversible process. Note that most of the processes in nature are irreversible. Okay, as I already mentioned before about the work done by a thermodynamic system, I said that work done is nothing but the integral of PdV. And how does this come about? Uh, People generally take the example of a gas in a cylinder, then there is a piston attached here. Okay, that can move inside or it can be pulled outside. Okay, now what happens is if the gas is expanding against the friction, so the gas will try to exert a force on the piston and displace it through a distance, and will try to do work on the piston. So if it's trying to expand, it will apply a force, then that implies it will apply a pressure, and it will do some work on this mechanical piston. If the piston is going in and it is trying to compress the gas, then the work will be done on the gas. Okay, uh, so you should know that the work is associated with a change in volume every time. Okay, so when I write the work done is nothing but the integral of small changes in work from Vi to Vf is equal to integral Vi Vf of P into dV. Okay, so there are different cases available for work done. First of all, if volume is constant, then your work done is 0. Secondly, if pressure is constant, then I'll just draw the graphs for these, so it's easier for you to understand what I'm saying. So if my first case is when my volume is constant, V is equal to constant, that implies work done is equal to 0. Okay. Uh, Next, what do I have? I have uh, for the what is the PV diagram for this? My PV diagram for this is nothing but something like this. For the second case, what do I have? I have my volume is increasing. Okay, so if the volume is increasing, what do we have? If I draw the diagram for this, the PV diagram. Initially, I was at some volume, let's say A. Finally, I am at some volume B. Okay, there are two cases. One where I am keeping the pressure as constant. I can even have the case where pressure is also changing. What all I'm focusing on right now is what happens to the volume. So in both the cases, V is increasing from the point A to the point B. Okay. Now what is the work done? Work done is nothing but the shaded area here, or work done is nothing but the shaded area here. Okay. So PV diagram. Similarly, you can have the volume to be decreasing. In the decreasing case, you will have a diagram such as this. This is the initial point, this is the final point. Work done will be something like this. Or I can have a diagram in which this is my initial point, this is my final point, and the area under this curve will give me the work done in this process. Okay, so note here that uh, the work done here is greater than 0. So whenever your volume is increasing, that implies the work that is being done on the system is negative, or the work done by the system towards the surroundings is positive. So my W is greater than 0. Similarly, if it is decreasing, or I show this with an arrow to the left side, then that implies W is less than 0. Okay, uh, or it's negative. Now this cyclic process, even if you try to find the area of the cyclic process, this area, you will attach a negative sign to it. Okay, what about the negative a cyclic process? The cyclic process, it can go like this. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll add the area for the times when volume is increasing, and you will subtract from it the area under the second curve. So this is the first curve, this is the second curve. Okay, so you will take the area under the first curve minus area under the second curve is the work done. Similarly, you can have a graph like this, where I have made a cyclic process. Okay, so what is the work done? What you need, these two branches will not contribute anything. So you have the area done by this and the area under the second curve. So what you need to focus on the area that is inside the box. So only the area inside the box will be calculated as the work done. If this is the first surface, this is the second surface, then I have work done is equal to A1 minus A2. Okay, or sorry, this is nothing but A2. If in my diagram, I had something like this, this was my diagram, and my arrows were in this fashion. So note that whenever the arrow is in the left side, or wait a second, this is in the right side. Whenever the arrow is in the left side, the work done is negative. So the work done under this curve is negative, and the work done under this curve is positive. So when you try to find out the net work done, it will turn out to be a negative value, and it will be equal to the shaded region between the curves. With this done, we can thus say that I can say that work done in a clockwise cycle is positive. Okay, so work done a clockwise process is equal to positive. So, and the work done in a anti-clockwise cycle is negative. So what is the, this can be your clockwise process. Okay, so what will you do? You will calculate the work done, the area under the above curve, and then you will calculate the area under the lower curve, and then you will uh, add these two. Okay, so it's basically the area of the closed path. And when I said add these two, that is because one will contribute a positive value, one will contribute a negative value. Okay, this brings us to the first law of thermodynamics, which I already stated before. The first law of thermodynamics, which says that change in internal energy is equal to dq minus dw, dq minus dw. Okay, and it says that the if some quantity of heat is applied to the system, and that system is capable of doing some external work, then the quantity of heat absorbed by the system is equal to the sum of the increase in the internal energy of the system and the external work done by the system. Okay, with this in mind, we look at some processes. Using the first law, you can easily look at the process of melting. Okay, so for the process of melting, because we know that if I write dq is equal to du plus delta w. Okay, I know that delta w is equal to 0 because uh, p delta v is equal to 0. Okay, so therefore I can easily write that for the process of melting, I can easily write my delta u is equal to m times L. Okay, however, in the case of boiling, my delta u boiling, I can write that my delta u is equal to, sorry, I'll just rearrange this. I can write my dq is equal to du plus delta w. Okay, or I can write my ml is equal to uv minus u of vapor minus u of liquid plus P into V of vapor minus V of liquid. You should take a note of these two things. Okay. Next, as I already mentioned, there are processes which are isochoric processes. So in the isochoric processes, what happens is the volume remains the same. So you have your PV curve. Okay, and this is your diagram for the case when V is equal to constant. If V is constant, this is a diagram that implies dP by dV, or the slope of the curve, is equal to infinity. Okay. Uh, you can even look at the other process, which is isobaric process, which I already mentioned on that graph. We are just looking at these again. So here, what is dP by dV? This is P, this is V. So dP by dV is equal to 0. Okay, which is the slope of the curve. A third thing that I have is an isothermal process. Okay, for the isothermal process, you will get a slope like this. Okay, and how do you calculate the slope? By dP by dV turns out to be minus P by V. Why? Because temperature is constant in this case. Okay, so in this case, PV is equal to constant. In the ideal gas equation, we had PV is equal to nRT. These are constant, and temperature is also constant, so PV is equal to constant. Okay, with that in mind, you can find that P dV plus V dP is equal to 0, or dP by dV is equal to minus P by V. Okay, so the slope here is minus P by V. Okay, however, if you take the case of an adiabatic process, first of all, what is an adiabatic process? P is equal to constant here. Now for an adiabatic process, uh, pressure, volume and temperature of the system change, but there is no exchange of heat between the system and the surroundings. Okay, so the equation for the adiabatic process that I told you about was PV to the power gamma is equal to constant. Okay, and when you try to draw the this thing slope of the curve, so I have my adiabatic slope like this. Okay, and note that I have the isothermal and I have the adiabatic slope right over here. Okay, for this the slope is dP by dV is equal to minus gamma times PV, P by V. Note that how this is different from the case of isothermal. This was the case for isothermal. This is the case for adiabatic. Okay, there are several examples for adiabatic. For example, propagation of sound in waves. Okay, or bursting of a cycle tube. But remember that if a question says that something is happening suddenly, okay, whenever you find the word suddenly in the question, then note that that process is happening adiabatically. Okay, or this equation of state will be valid for it. Okay, given this, we can just quickly return to our original discussion, uh, uh, where I just described to you about the type of process that are there. Now, if you want to find the general C, which is the heat capacity for any equation, let that be PV is equal to constant, which is the case for the isothermal, or PV to the power gamma is equal to constant in the case of adiabatic process. I have PV to the power x is equal to constant, implying that the heat capacity C is nothing but R by gamma minus 1 plus R by 1 plus 1 minus x. This is an essential equation. This equation I have already told you about, the dependence on U on the change in temperature and the heat capacity with unit volume, or heat capacity for a fixed volume. And you should know that Cp minus Cv turns out to be R. This is not the case always, as we'll see in one of the questions. Next, you should know what efficiency means. Okay, So efficiency is the total mechanical work done by the gas in the whole process divided by heat absorbed by the gas. Okay, and it is the area under the cycle in the PV curve divided by heat injected into the system. Let us look at another question. Certain perfect gas is found to obey an equation PV to the power n is a constant during adiabatic process. The volume expansion coefficient at temperature T is given by what? Now, in order to do any questions in which something of this sort or any new gas law is given to you, that this the following gas obeys PV to the power n or RT to the power something, or anything that is given to you, first of all you just write them down. So PV to the power n is constant. Okay, and then you should always write the second equation also, the ones that we already know, that PV is equal to mu RT. Okay, then using these two equations you arrive at some relation. So from here I can easily write that V is proportional to T to the power 1 by 1 minus n. Okay, so if I write the change in V by V, so my change in V by V is nothing but 1 by 1 minus n into delta T by T. Okay, how is this? So I can, if I want to write this in terms of derivatives, I can write V is equal to k times some constant times T to the power something. Okay, 1 by 1 minus n, and then you take the derivative of both sides. So you have dV is equal to k is a constant, so k into dt, and then when you take derivative of that, 1 by 1 minus n will come here. Okay, and you'll be left with dt into t to the power 1 by 1 minus n minus 1. Okay, and then you divide both the sides by the same quantity. So if I divide it by v, I'll be dividing this side by k times kt into the power 1 by 1 minus n. Okay, so these things will cut and I'll be left with dv by v is equal to 1 by 1 minus n uh, t to the power minus 1 on the top and 2 dt, which is nothing but dv by v is equal to 1 by 1 minus n into dt by t, which is what I wrote. Okay, so with this in the picture, my volume expansion coefficient, my volume expansion coefficient is given by delta V by V delta T. Okay, is nothing but 1 by 1 minus n into T. Okay, this is your answer. Let's look at another question. A motor tire pumped to a pressure of 3 atms, then it suddenly bursts. So first of all, note the word suddenly. Calculate the fall in temperature due to the adiabatic expansion. So even if in the question they did not tell you about the adiabatic expansion, you should always note that whenever the term suddenly comes, you should be applying the rules for adiabatic transport or adiabatic expansions. Now the temperature of air before expansion is 27 degrees Celsius, given gamma is equal to 1.4. Okay, we know that for adiabatic expansions or for any adiabatic process, PV to the power gamma is equal to constant. Okay, now we also know that PV is equal to mu RT. Okay. Using these two, if I substitute the second one into the first one, I can easily write that T to the power gamma into P to the power 1 minus gamma is equal to constant. Okay, now that I have this, I can write that T1 to the power gamma into P1 to the power gamma minus 1 is equal to T2 to the power gamma into P2 to the power gamma minus 1. Okay, this simply implies This simply implies that I can write T2 by T1 to the power gamma is equal to P1 by P2 to the power 1 minus gamma. Okay, that simply implies that T2 by 300 to the power 1.4 is equal to 3 by 1 to the power 1 minus 1.4. Okay, this implies that T2 is nothing but 219.2 Kelvin and T1 minus T2 is equal to 300 minus 219.2 is equal to 80.8 Kelvin.
Let's look at one more question. 1 mole of an ideal gas passes through a process where the pressure and volume obey the relation which is given here. Here P0 and V0 are constants. You're supposed to calculate the change in the temperature of the gas if its volume changes from V0 to 2V0. So let's first write down what is given to you in the question. You're given that P is equal to P0 times 1 minus 1 by 2 V0 by V whole square. Okay. Now when P1 is equal to V0, okay, at that time I have P1 is equal to P0 into 1 minus 1 by 2 is equal to P0 by 2. Okay. Similarly, when V2 is equal to 2 V0, I have P2 is equal to P0 into 1 minus half into 1 by 4, which is nothing but 7 times P0 by 8. Okay, given these two things, I can write that change in T is nothing but T2 minus T1. Okay, it is nothing but the mod of P1 V1 by NR minus P2 V2 by NR. Okay, so my delta T can be written as T2 minus T1 is equal to mod of 1 by NR. I am taking this as common. I have P1 V1 minus P2 V2. Okay, if I just substitute the values now, I get is equal to mod 1 by NR into what? Into P0 V0 by 2 minus 7 P0 V0 by 4. Okay, now because n is given to be 1, I can write this as 5 E0 V0 by 4 R.
Next, we look at the Carnot engine. So Carnot devised an engine which has the maximum efficiency. And what he did was, let's say you have your working substance or your system. Let's say your working substance is this. Okay, this has some gas inside it. What he wanted to achieve was that if this gas is given some energy, let's say some heat Q1, okay, then you want some output from this engine as some work done on maybe a piston. For example, in a car you have an engine in which you take heat from the combustion and you do some work on the pistons to move the gears, and then the remaining heat is given off to another sink or reservoir. Okay, So the one that is providing the heat to the system is T1, is at a temperature T1, or, or a hotter temperature. The final one that is receiving the heat from the gas is at a temperature T2 or colder, and you are doing some work through the gas. So the Carnot engine is described here. You start with the process A, at a point A. Let the point A have the state variables V, and T, T1, V1, T1. Then what you do is you do an isothermal expansion from A to the point B. Okay. How do you do the isothermal expansion? Basically, if my working substance was something like this, there was a piston here. Okay. And you have your, let's say, source or the heat reservoir. So I will allow this to expand slowly. Okay. So if the gas is expanding, this piston will start to go up. Okay. But if the volume is increasing, the temperature should decrease. So in order that the temperature does not change, okay, what will happen is I will apply some amount of heat, let's say Q1, to this gas. So there is expansion going on and there is some heat coming in, so the temperature remains the same. So you arrive at a point B. So my point B will have different P2 pressure and volume, but the temperature will still be the same. Next, what you'll do is next is adiabatic expansion from B to point C. Okay, so there will be no heat exchange in this leg, but you will reach a point C. Okay, with some different P3, V3, and T3. Okay, or T2 because I only had T1 there. Now what you do is there is an isothermal compression cycle. So from C to D you are compressing the gas again. So there were two legs of expansions and then there are two legs of compressions. So in the first leg you do a isothermal compression to a point D, and then from the point D you do a adiabatic compression to the point A. Okay, what you should know are all these processes clearly because they are asked in the paper. And the next thing is about the efficiency of the heat engine, which is defined as the work done divided by the heat taken from the source. So this is my working substance as I described before. My working substance is taking in some heat from the one of the reservoirs at a higher temperature. It is doing some work and it is releasing the rest of the heat to a sink or the cold reservoir. So for this engine, it is given by T1 minus T2 by T1 is equal to Q1 minus Q2 by Q1. How is this so? I can easily write for this Carnot engine. I have this equation. In general, also I have Q1 that is coming in is equal to work done plus Q2 that is going out. Okay, this is the master equation for this, and using this you can easily write down anything that is required. So from the first one you can easily write that 1 minus T2 by T1 is equal to 1 minus Q2 by Q1. Okay, note that this is equal to the efficiency for every engine, but this equation being equal to this, right, this LHS being equal to RHS is the case for the Carnot engine. So I have that T2 by T1 is nothing but Q2 by Q1 is equal to, okay, first of all these two are same. Also if you want to find the efficiency then you can use any of these formulas. Next is the process of refrigeration. What happens in refrigeration is this is my working substance again. So what you do is you draw in heat from the cold reservoir, you do some work on the substance, and then you give the heat to a hot reservoir. This is what happens inside your refrigerators at home as well. Okay, so for this process you have a quantity known as beta, which is the heat extracted from cold reservoir by work done on refrigerator, which is nothing but Q2 by W. Okay, and then you just use this equation to write work done in terms of Q1 and Q2. So you will get beta is equal to 1 by Q1 by Q2 minus 1. You should remember this formula as well. You should note this formula as well. Okay, but even if you don't want to remember formulas, you should know what the definition is, and you should know the equation that is governing the system. Let us take a look at another question. Three Carnot engines operate in series between a heat source at a temperature T1 and a heat sink at a temperature T4. There are two other reservoirs at temperature T2 and T3, where T1 is greater than T2 and is greater than T3, which is greater than T4. The three engines are equally efficient if now the question has asked you when the three of the engines will be equally efficient. So your condition is eta 1 is equal to eta 2 equal to eta 3. Okay. Now these are Carnot engines, so I can write 1 minus T2 by T1 is equal to 1 minus T3 by T2. I can write this again. Wait. 1 minus T3 by T2 is equal to 1 minus T4 by T3. Okay. Now I can easily eliminate the 1 and I can write this as T2 by T1 is equal to T3 by T2 is equal to T4 by T3. Using this I can write that T2 is nothing but the root of T3 and T1 if I just use these two equations, these two. Okay. Similarly, I can use these two to write that T3 is equal to root over T2 into T4. Okay, and from these two I can write that T2 is nothing but T1 square T4 to the power 1 by 3 and T3 is equal to T1 into T4 square to the power 1 by 3. Let's look at another question. In a process, temperature and volume of 1 mole of an ideal monoatomic gas are varied according to the relation Vt is equal to constant. In this process, the temperature of the gas is increased by delta T. The amount of heat absorbed by the gas is given by what? So let's just write what is given to us first. So Vt is given to V as K, and we already know that PV is equal to nRT. Okay, so using these two relations, I can easily write that T is equal to PV by NR. Okay, substituting it in the first equation, I get V into PV by NR is equal to some constant K. Okay, this implies that PV square is equal to K and R is equal to some constant, let's say K prime. Okay, that implies PV square is equal to constant. Okay, now PV square is constant, so for a polytropic process I have that my heat capacity is given by R divided by 1 minus X plus CV. Okay, note that this equation is not valid for X to be equal to 1. Okay, what is X here? X is the power of V in this equation. Okay, so using this, first of all I get the heat capacity, and how do you translate this to the heat that is there? So we already know that the heat is equal to N times C into dt. Okay, we know this because we just transposed what the meaning of C is. So that implies my delta Q can be written as R by 2 into delta T, where N is equal to 1 moles. Note that this is delta Q. Here only the heat capacity is required. If I wanted to find delta U is equal to N C V delta T. Okay.